Senator Froseth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly. House Bill 1398 received a do not pass recommendation on an 8-5 vote from the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. House Bill 1398, as amended by a Hog House amendment, would impose a fee of 20 cents per 100 gallons of fresh water dispensed to an oil field and gas industry user at a water depot or a water dispensing point in this state. The proceeds from the collections of this fee would all be deposited in the Oil and Gas Impact Grant Fund. Mr. Speaker and Assembly, the House Bill 1398 would make a substantial change in our state water policy in regard to state-issued water use permit holders who use state and federal controlled water supplies for irrigation, domestic, commercial, or industrial purposes, and may eventually result in fees being imposed on all of those categories of water usage. Mr. Speaker and Assembly, again, the Energy and Natural Resources Committee asks for a do not pass and hope that you concur. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any discussion? Representative Kaiser.
Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly, this is a bill that, as the bill carrier explained, assesses a fee for the commercial use for the oil industry. Let me first begin by asking the question, who owns the water in the aquifers or in the Missouri River or Lake Sakakawea that is being used in the oil field? The answer is, I believe, you do, the citizens of North Dakota. And the reason I say that is that no individual can access water from our aquifers or from the Missouri River or from the lake without obtaining a water permit from the State Water Commission. The Water Commission regulates the number of permits, the amount of water allocated per permit, and in those cases where the aquifer may be drained down, they also can regulate or restrict the use of a water permit holder. Now, what's different? There was the notion introduced by the bill carrier, which has no basis of fact, that this might extend to all other areas of water. What is different about use of water in the oil field? Historically, water has been used in the state of North Dakota for agricultural purposes, domestic purposes, and some industrial purposes. But in all cases, historically, water has been used in those three categories, and it has been returned to the water table. When we use it for industrial purposes for irrigation, it is used. It also returns to the water table. In industrial applications in our state, I used the example in committee of Coca-Cola. The Coca-Cola bottling plant uses an immense amount of water, but it does eventually get returned to the water table. In all other uses, that water gets returned to the water table. What's different about the oil industry? Well, one is the magnitude of water that is being used. Currently, in North Dakota, we have 8,224 operating, producing wells. We have approximately 1,300 injection wells. How much water is required to drill and frack one well today? Today, we are using approximately 3 million gallons of water to drill and frack a well. But that's the beginning. We also, once the well has been drilled and fracked, are using somewhere between 400 to 600 gallons of water per day, and that usage will last, based on current projections, for approximately 45 years. So let's extend those numbers. 3 million times 8,224 producing wells currently represents 24,672,000,000 gallons of water. For the maintenance, if we take the low end, the 400 gallons per day for the operation of a well, That equals 6,570,000 gallons per well times 8,224, 54 billion gallons of water. Combined, we have almost $100 billion or gallons of water being used currently in the oil industry, and we expect to drill significantly more wells out there. Now, what happens to this water? This water does not get returned to the water table. This water gets returned to deep wells that are drilled for disposal purposes, not getting returned in any way to the water resources of the state of North Dakota. It will not have a future use. That makes it different. That makes it different than every other application of water in our state. So the question is, in this legislative session, we have already appropriated, early in the session, money for the DOT budget, money for the energy area. I've asked for an estimate, it's somewhere around $500 million, to deal with the impact on the energy. And here we have all of these loading areas that are hauling all of this water, all of the trucks that are hauling this water, and it's our resource. It is no different than an oil extraction tax. It is no different that we should be requiring these companies that are tearing up our roads, servicing the oil industry, to be contributing in some manner. The rate of contribution is relatively minor, but, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, there is a big difference between this water and all of the other uses of water. We are the owners of it. We should be receiving some compensation. I think the Water Commission and the governor, as they have allowed these private permit holders to convert from agricultural use to commercial use to service the industry, I don't oppose it, but we should have, as owners of that water, been receiving some compensation. I know it's a new tax, we call it a fee, but it's still an assessment. But it is assessing those who benefit. In my company, I use the analogy in our committee, I would love for the state of North Dakota to provide the paper, the ink, the plates, the chemicals, free of charge to me. I'll buy the equipment. I have no problem with that. But I do think we owe the citizens of North Dakota some return on the asset that is being provided at no cost. Of course, they have to put in pumps. They have to put in wells. I would ask this Assembly to grant me a water permit out there with almost unlimited water. I'll be happy to put in those improvements. So members of the Assembly, I hope you'll reject the committee's recommendation and pass this bill.
Is there further discussion? Representative Scarpo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly. Representative Kaiser makes very persuasive arguments with regard to this issue. And I do believe that we should pass this bill and that we should send it across the hall, because I do think it warrants a discussion on the other side. And I think he is very correct in his statements about the effects of the utilization of this water. It does get pumped back into deep formations that we do not see again. And it is not an environment that we should necessarily ask to continue. I believe the industry is working hard to come up with a different methodology and not utilize water. But in the meantime, our roads are being destroyed by the hauling of that water from those water depots and to those water disposals.
Representative Froseth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly. About a week ago, I visited with a member of the Water Users Resource Board, County Board in these chambers, and he alluded to this bill, and he says this would be the absolute worst time for North Dakota to place a fee on the use of water, especially water from the Missouri River. You all received a communication from Governor Dalrymple on February 22nd telling about his efforts to stop the Corps of Engineers from imposing a fee and the charge for businesses, farmers, ranchers for access to Missouri River water. The Missouri River's natural flows are the rightful property of the people of North Dakota, and we will vigorously oppose any attempt by the Corps to arbitrarily begin charging for a water fee, Dalrymple said. And in light of that, negotiations going on with the Corps and the state of North Dakota, at this time, I think this would be a very poor time for the state to be charging a fee for that very water that we're insisting that should be free to us. So I would urge to uphold the committee's recommendation for do not pass.
Is there further discussion? Representative Porter.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly, I would hope that we could pass this bill, send it over to the Senate, keep the discussion going. I think the one thing and the key component to this is the fact that all of the revenues are turned back to the Oil Impact Fund, where the money is then distributed out to those areas that are impacted by the industry. And this industry is 100% trucks, and it's 100% road damage. And if you want to assist Western North Dakota with their #1 complaint, which is damage to their roads and infrastructure, this is the bill that utilizes that fund, that will put a source of revenue in that fund in order to fix their infrastructure. So I would certainly hope we could pass this and send it over to the Senate.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the House has before it for final consideration House Bill 1398. The clerk will open the key and you may record your vote. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? The key will be closed and the clerk will take the record. The final vote shows 36 yea, 57 nay, 1 absent and not voting. House Bill 1398 is declared failed.